Hey, what's happening, guys? Vega here from Serpent X Special Forces, coming to you with an update. I'm sure you've heard about it or seen about it somewhere online that Battlefield 5 released an update. So the Origin, or if you're on PC, you're using Origin, released an update for ray tracing. So ray tracing in the past, the games were unplayable, and if you've seen my previous video, it was really rough to even play at 1440 or 4K, especially on the 2080. Now, a lot of the reviews out there are talking more about the 2080 Ti. I want to talk to you about the 2080. Now, the 2080 Ti is perfectly capable of running Battlefield 5 and ray tracing on. Of course, you need DXR enabled, and DirectX 12 needs to be enabled first in order for you to turn on DXR. But you also need the latest NVIDIA drivers, and you're also going to need to update the game. Origin, if you're on PC, as I said, will automatically update, so you don't need to worry about that. But the latest NVIDIA drivers, and definitely make sure DirectX 12 is enabled, as I mentioned in my previous video. The 2080 Ti is king right now in the graphics department, but on the 2080 side, it's basically performance-wise a 1080 Ti, but with the capability of doing ray tracing, unless you were able to trick Battlefield into using your 1080 Ti, but its performance is going to be lackluster. Anyways, I wanted to show you some information here. This recent update is Tides of War, and it does increase performance. I'm actually impressed with the performance gain. I want to show you some video of my performance and what I found. The NVIDIA driver you're going to need is 417.22. Oh, it's right there. And then once you install that, you'll be good to go. Now, here's a chart for the 2080 Ti. The 2080 is in there as well. But let me show you what I got. Unfortunately, unfortunately, Fraps is giving me a hard time. So I'm just going to show you some demo. Look in the top left of your screen here. This is on 1080p. And I was just able to sustain somewhere in the 70s to 90s range in FPS with ray tracing on. Everything on ultra, nothing toned down. If you excuse my gameplay, you can see throughout the video we're sitting 80, 76, 75 dips, 73 dips, but 73, you know, lows weren't bad at all. It's very playable. Actually very fun. It looks really good. There were some things in this update, including the drivers, where I was in a tank and I got blown up, and the explosion made the game crash. Now, I don't think it's the drivers like on NVIDIA side. I think it's the game. Battlefield and EA is still optimizing it, and I know a lot of people have turned away from EA because of their past situation and stupidity, but the game is actually really good. I personally enjoy it. I liked Battlefield 1942, and to me this is just an updated Battlefield 1942, better graphics and all that good stuff. So as you can see on the 1080p side, we've been able to sustain pretty good graphics. Here we are in 1440p, and if you look up at the top there, we're sitting anywhere between 67, 68, 66, dips down into the 50s quite a bit. I think the lowest I saw was 54 FPS, but sustaining 60 FPS no problem. So especially when you're spending money on a 2080, you want to get your money's worth out of it. You don't want to be gaming at 1080p. You're either going to be playing at 1440 or 4K. Now, I will say that even with the 4K, or excuse me, even at 1440, there are some dips and high explosions, but nothing that's not unplayable. You'll be able to sustain around you know, the lowest of 58, 50, 57, somewhere in there at 1440p on the 2080. And I have the Asus, the Asus RTX Dual OC, or whatever the hell they call it now. So nothing special. Obviously, if you have the EVGA or MSI Duke, then you should be pretty good, especially in overclocking. I can only get so far with this card, but it's still perfectly capable. Moving on to 4K and this stupid Windows thing. 4K is not that video. That's actually more 1440p. here's 4K. Look how choppy the video is. So top left corner, 30 FPS, 31. Sometimes we see 29. But granted, this is multiplayer. A lot of the reviews are using single player because I think the reason they're using single player is because they can repeat the benchmark. You want to have a controlled environment. You want to be able to repeat the same situation, same scenarios, so that way it's the consistency there. But multiplayer is really what everybody cares about. And in multiplayer, as you can see, the 2080 is able to keep up with it, sitting around 30 frames per second. But the lows is killer. It starts turning seriously problematic during high, huge problems or intense fight scenes, explosions, all that good stuff. I couldn't play. I couldn't get shots off. I made a couple kills, but I mostly died. So 4K on the 2080 with RTX, ray tracing on, is unsustainable in my opinion. You may be able to get away with it on low settings, but personally, I didn't see too much of a difference. We would still see a high, like dips in the 20s, and high of 38, somewhere in there, 41 as you just saw. So long story short, 2080, capable of playing Battlefield 5 now with ray tracing, no problem. 4K I wouldn't recommend it. 1440p is definitely smooth and the graphics look wonderful. And 1080p is definitely playable, especially if you have a high refresh monitor. Obviously, the highest we saw was 80 frames per second, but you're going to be averaging around 70 frames per second on 1080p, 60 on 1440, and unfortunately around 30 on 4K. So the answer to your question is, can the 2080 really run ray tracing at 4K? The answer to that is no. But it can run it at 1440p and pretty much everything else we need. So I think it's perfectly capable. Here in this chart, let's see if I can zoom in with you. Yeah, I'm gonna have a link to my last video. Previous to this update, completely unplayable in 4K, 13 FPS, 10 FPS, and then with this recent update, we're definitely back in the game. Able to use ray tracing, able to enjoy the graphics, enjoy the game, enjoy the performance at 1440p and 1080p. Other than that, you will not be able to sustain 4K. Depending on the game, maybe there's some more optimizations that will come up. They did take away a couple things like rendering items or elements that didn't need to be rendered or ray traced at all. So they kind of cut back on it. It still, in my opinion, makes things a little bit too shiny. But it does bring the fire aspect, the water, the reflections, the lighting. It definitely brings a nice touch to games. So I'm interested in not only seeing what ray tracing has to offer in the future, past Battlefield, but deep learning super sampling. As I said in the past, deep learning super sampling is not really out yet. And as games and the game developers code for it, we should see some pretty good in performance. But just to let you know, PC Gamer got 33 FPS average on a 2080, 26.4 lows, which seems right to me. That's what you saw of my video. If you need to, pause it and go back. And then on 1440p, 45.3 average, 65.3. Yeah, so that's about right. And then 56% lows. And then looks like 81 average on 1080p and then 66 lows. So enjoy Battlefield 5. I'm really glad they came out with this update, some optimizations. I look forward to future updates from EA. Hopefully they don't do any more stupid stuff to ruin their base and their community. But this game's really fun, and I'm glad that a 2080 can perform, even the 2070, especially at 1080p and 1440p. But again, when you get into the 4K range, it's going to be unplayable. But even at the 4K range, the 2080 Ti has lows in the 42.7. So as future cards come out with ray tracing, we should see an improvement. But that's all I got for you guys today. I just wanted to share my take and my information with you about ray tracing, along with the other outlets and reviewers out there who made an update on Battlefield. Get the latest drivers, enable DirectX 12, update your game, turn on DXR, test it on your system. Let us know what you got in your results. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and comment below. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.